Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Trevor here. I'm joined by Thomas, and today we are going to be going over something that we've wanted to do for a second here. Our top 25 films of the decade so far. It's 2025. We're a little bit over halfway through the decade. And we just thought this would be fun. Also, wild that we're over halfway through this decade.
I
Um,
know, I know. That is
insane.
pretty
This
crazy.
channel
But
was
yeah,
started in 2021, which is
yeah,
insane to think about.
going
So,
for a
just
long time. But no, yeah, I think especially this is a video that's important to do because a lot of people always, say now all film is in decline. We've not had any good films
sure.
in like 10 years. But that's just simply not true. When you look at the decade we've had, there are some really great films within it and some of my favorite films of all time. So yes, it's nice to kind of take a retrospective look back at the past 5 years and pick out, yeah, definitely some real gems of filmmaking.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I'm excited about this one. I think we were initially going to do a top 50 and then realized that would be a bit too ambitious. So you're going to get 25 from each of us. Essentially, top 50 should be some crossover.
Yeah.
Um, I'll kick off with just a few honorable mentions. Some that I didn't really fully want to leave out. Honorable mentions for me are going to include Spencer by Pablo Larraín, Evil Does Not Exist by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, Oppenheimer by Christopher Nolan, Asteroid City by Wes Anderson, All of Us Strangers by Andrew Hay, and Monster by Hirokazu Koreeda. I'll leave it at
Okay,
that.
yes, some of them we're definitely going to be touching on later. I also have Evil Does Not Exist in the honorable mentions. I
Yeah,
put both Oppenheimer and Barbie. I think hugely deserving of their cultural relevance,
yeah,
but don't need more discussion necessarily.
for sure.
Two Guadagnino, I think both Queer and Bones and All are worthy of mentioning, but just missed out on the list. And then
Yeah,
The Northman as well. I think
forgot you like
is
that one. Yeah,
yeah, love that film, good stuff, but yeah, just didn't quite crack the top 25.
first, first. All right, are you ready? Do you want to start or me?
Do you want to kick off?
All right. We're gonna start with something that's definitely not in your list. I have Leos Carax's Annette. Um, I I love this film. It's a rock opera musical with Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. It is, it seems obvious, but it is very, very operatic. I think in a way that a lot of films now aren't. It plays so heavily into the melodrama. It is so incredibly stagey. You obviously have like Baby Annette, the doll, but even like I think about the sequence where they're like on the boat in the middle of the storm. Like everything is so accentuated, I think, to the nth degree, and it makes for this like incredibly like luscious, visceral experience. Sparks is one of my favorite bands of all time. So I obviously quite enjoy the music. I think that Adam Driver is giving one of, if not the best performances of his career, just like one of the most completely committing to the bit performances that we've had this decade. I don't know. I think that I think it is my favorite musical of this decade so far. I don't think that we have really anything like it, and I don't think that anything else will exist like it. That is just so bold and audacious in this way.
Sure. No, I definitely had problems with it, but it was more a case of this just kind of thing wasn't for me rather than any kind of more objective criticism towards it. So
Sure.
very fair enough. My 25, and this is I felt weird not including a single animated film. And I also do just think it is one of the best films of the decade so far. That's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Sure.
I do think it is quite easily the best animated film of the decade. Just the way that it uses the animation, the way that it is so kind of accessible whilst touching on stuff that is very important to touch on. Obviously, there was a whole debate around whether it is an allegory for trans, etc., trans issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's a debate. I think it is just
Transgender.
very clear and obvious. And yeah, it really as well services as a film within itself while still making you very excited for future installments in it. And yeah, it's such a creative film, such a wild ride, such an entertaining film. That also packs a lot within it and is also keeps that kind of emotional resonance. So definitely one of my favorites of the decade.
Yeah, no, it's up there. I don't know if it is 100% my favorite of this decade so far, but it's definitely like in that top two or three as far as animation. So yeah, no, good shout, good shout. My number 24 is going to be David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. I am loving this late stage Cronenberg period that we are in. I love how Kristen Stewart plays this like Weasley little mouse fucker. And I don't know. I think that this is like a really, really fascinating look at like the human body in a way that he didn't really explore earlier in his career. Like this, it very much feels like somebody who is towards the end of their life, taking a new perspective on the same themes that he has explored throughout his entire life, which I just think is so incredibly fascinating. Surgery is the new sex as a line is something that I think about at least weekly. I love the like very drab world that is built out through the production design. I would love to spend more time in it. I know I really don't think that this is talked about enough as like one of the most visionary pieces of this decade so far.
Amazing, amazing. Mine 24, and I've gone quite mainstream to begin with. Don't worry, we'll get to the RC pretentious picks in a sec. But the last duel, and I know that one's not going to be on your list.
Oh, okay, yeah,
This is
I
just
like it. I don't think it's
yeah,
bad.
this is everything kind of Gladiator 2 should have been. It's epic. The action is brutal. It's all the production design in the world. It just launches you in to this kind of period world and period setting. And it's long, but it feels epic. So it kind of can get away with being quite long. I think the way that it's structured, obviously that Rashomon structure, we'll get to another film that uses a similar structure later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an excellent use of that. I love kind of films that use that structure and use it for purpose, and I do think this does have that going on. I think there's some great performances there, and but at its core, similarly to Spider-Man Across Spiders, I just think there is the kind of entertainment, pure like core entertainment factor that you get from this film that really has stuck with me, and yeah, offers a kind of different kind of film to a lot of the ones you'll see on the list.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's not anywhere close to my list, but I did quite like this film. I think it's probably the best in this like late stage Ridley Scott kind of series of films that we've been getting. So no, I think it's quite good. My number 23 is a film that made me cry a lot. It is Come On by Mike Mills. I just think that Joaquin Phoenix is so incredibly tender and intimate in this. I really like the photography here. I just think it's so kind of plain and allows um the emotion to kind of speak through it. I think I don't know. It's a very neatly presented film. I think, which is what makes it very attractive. I think it's hard to talk about it without talking about Woody Norman giving maybe the best child performance of the decade. It's between him and the kid from Anatomy of a Fall, who I'm blanking on
Well,
his name.
or another one which I'll touch on literally in my
Okay,
next pick. But
okay.
yeah.
But yeah, no. I think it's a very simple film about connection, and I think it gets into art with Joaquin Phoenix's job and growing up, and I think it is just a film that I think hit me at a really correct time, I think, in life when I needed it. So yeah, just very lovely, I think.
Yeah. Amazing. Nice pick. My number 23 is Totem. I think Naomi
Yep, I
Ascentia's.
figured that's where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, it is such an interesting use of perspective and to kind of tell this whole story and subtly bring in these themes of death and the kind of not even direct grief because they're not grieving over anything yet. It's that kind of um ready, preparing yourself to be in mourning. I think that is such an interesting feeling to capture and specifically capture through this child's perspective that whilst also being just quite an interesting family drama, you've got that kind of chaotic scene going on as they're preparing his birthday party. I just thought it was such an interesting and it really like such an interesting perspective to jump into. And I think really demonstrates the kind of power of film more generally is that it is about putting you in these shoes of different people that you can't ever experience yourself, but capturing that and capturing something truthful in that. And I think Totem does an excellent job in doing that. It was sorely kind of undervalued in the year it came out, and is one that I definitely will still champion to this day as one of the best films of the decade so far.
Yeah, no, it's one that you put me onto, and I think is really excellent. So no, 100%. Number 22, I have a bit more of a mainstream one, as mainstream as you can get with a international film. But I've gone for The Worst Person in the World. I, it's I actually just rewatched it recently, to be honest, and it's so energetic and fun and propulsive, and it feels so like of this time without being annoying. Like it feels like it embodies all of the things while still being able to be self-critical. I think Renate Reinsve is an absolute revelation. She's still probably my favorite performance of that year. Overall, I think that she's just so endearing and charming and embodies all of the flaws of her character while still like towing this kind of tightrope into you know being emotionally vulnerable for the audience and being the surrogate. Um, I don't know. I think the way that uh, Trier crafts this narrative alongside what's his name, Eskelvolt, I think, uh, is just very very natural. I think, and I think that's what really works about this film and makes it such a broad um piece that's connected with a lot of people. So
Yes,
I'm
it's
very excited for sentimental value.
was very close to getting onto my list. I think it's one that I definitely want to go back to, possibly when I'm slightly older as well, because it is exploring those
Yes,
kind of
for sure.
really kind of late 20s, early 30s, that kind of age and the kind
Yeah.
of issues and problems and thoughts that arise from there. So definitely one that I am excited to kind of go back
And
to.
yeah, and I think it is very much the type of film that is going to change, every 5, 10
Yeah,
years you come back to it,
yeah,
which I think are some of the best films to, have in constant rotation and engage with. So yeah.
for sure. My number 22 is another international film that was a bit more well kind of seen. I don't know if it's on your list. It might be Decision to Leave.
Yes.
We will be getting back to it later. Cool. So I'll save some of the thoughts in there. But yeah, just this brilliant kind of Hitchcockian character piece that kind of evolves constantly as you're watching it. You're never left comfortable when watching this film. You're always kind of one step behind what's going on, but you feel, because Park Chan-wook is just such a brilliant kind of director and visionary, that you kind of feel like you're being guided along this trail. You put faith in him, but you're constantly left guessing as to kind of where the film's going, where it's going to unpack. Lots of brilliant metaphorical kind of imagery, lots of crazy cinematography techniques, just packed all into this very intriguing central mystery. So yeah, definitely one of the most assured films of this kind of decade. So
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Like I said, I'll be talking about that a bit later.
yeah,
My number 21 is Celine Song's Past Lives. Was unfortunately let down by her latest film, Materialist, but this one I just think is so like emotionally resonant. I think that like one thing that's really stuck out to me the more I sat with it is just how like beautifully shot it is, which I think is something that's really undersold about the film, but I think that's also like what makes it work because it is like the subversion of the love triangle. It is the subversion of like your conventional romance film. And the way that it uses natural lighting and it uses very intentional framing choices. Like every single like piece of blocking where the characters are placed within the frame to establish their relationships, how they are lit, like its use of like warm lighting, cold lighting. It's all so intentional and works to really effectively disarm the audience into subverting those genre tropes, which it's like I think very clearly playing with within the film. So I just think it's so intelligently made for a film that I think, as you've seen with Materialists, her writing can fall very flat. And I think that this is just so well crafted, and really elevates. I think it's already a good script into something that's really astounding.
yeah, definitely one that equally stuck with me. Didn't quite make my list, but 100% see the point there. My number 21 is and now he's become a lot more famous recently because he made Adolescence this year, but this was his directorial debut, Boiling Point, from
Mm,
Philip Bartini. And it's another kind of one-shot film. It stars Stephen Graham as the lead. It's set in this restaurant. It's kind of The Bear before The Bear was a thing as well. It definitely feels like a precursor to a lot of things that have become bigger this past decade and have kind of and I think it's a shame that this kind of hasn't been reclaimed in quite the same way and hasn't quite seen that same success, because it is really just tense and you're on your edge of the seat the entire time. It's very technically impressive, but also the way that it uses the one shot doesn't like force itself down you. It doesn't feel like occasionally Birdman felt like it was a bit okay, right? And 1917 as well. They felt like, sure, we're doing the spectacle, but also you're hammering over the head that we're doing the spectacle. This felt
Sure.
much more natural, and like the project itself is intrinsically tied to that way of filming it. That really works. Yeah, just I can see why Philip Barantini has gone on to do bigger things, and I'd more than tell people to go and check this one out as well as a kind of first major project from him.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. My number 20 I've gone for is Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. This is one. Well, actually, first I feel like I need to share this. I saw a fantastic Wim Wenders one-liner that I think I need to share with the masses, because there's plenty of Wim Wenders one-liners out there. But this one was a Wenders something I want to cop. I get it on a whim.
Right. Sure. I
It
see it.
counts.
It counts.
It
It
counts.
counts. It's a joke. It's cool.
Anyways, Koji Yakusho it gives one of the best performances of the decade in this, and I think what makes Wim Wenders films work so well, and I found this especially in Paris, Texas, which I just rewatched recently because I worked on a project surrounding Paris, Texas at my school, and I think that he is so good at distilling like place and exploring place through character. Um, like he really captures all of like the nuances and intricacies of what make a city or a region function, and then lay those all out through the eyes of a very, you know, troubled or conflicting or a character with a lot of like dissonance, right? And I think that this is such a fantastic example of that. I mean, for a film that started out as like a project about toilets in Tokyo, I think it reaches just this very simply beautiful perspective on life and living. It isn't like taking any like massive swings. It isn't anything doing anything too big, but I think it is a great example of finding like this universal moment, universal like emotion through just a very specific understanding of a place and the people who operate within it and the systems and functions of that place. So yeah, just really, really beautiful.
For
Made me
sure.
cry a lot.
It's funny looking back that before we kind of seen the film and all we knew was kind of the blurb and whatever synopsis, is that we used to, it used to be the Tokyo toilet film, and now it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no, when you actually see the film, it's not that at all. It is so much more than anything like that. So yes, no,
for
nice
sure.
choice. My number 20 is The Quiet Girl, which, interesting enough, in the
Mm,
title is the least subtle film, the least kind of subtle bit about it, because it is just so slow and methodical, but every bit of emotion and every single feeling that you could get from these characters is kind of drawn out, and you see it, you feel it. And that's really, really impressive. It's not dialogue heavy at all. It's not this kind of big thing. It's this character study. It's this study of these characters at these certain points and what they're feeling at this time, and it so effortlessly, I think, captures that. It has a great central performance from a child star. I don't recall her name,
I don't either.
um,
Yeah.
but yes, I mean, it is one that, yeah, is does take a while to get into, but I don't think that really matters, because when you do sit down and when you do let it kind of just sink over you, it draws you in and it doesn't let you go, and you feel every emotion of these characters, and it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I remember quite liking it. It's one that I don't remember all that much. It's been a second, but I remember, yeah, liking it when I see it,
Yeah, I think
when
you
I
should
saw it.
go back to it. It is quite Kelly Reichardt kind of
Okay,
vibe. It kind of has that
for sure.
tone to it. So
Sure. Okay, what we're at 19,
19.
right? 19 now. This might be one that you have on your list later. I have Justine Triet's Anatomy of a Fall.
Yep, that is on.
Um, okay. So I won't go too much into it, but I think I don't know. There's this is some of the best scenes I think of the decade. I think in particular it's the obvious one, but the fight that's recorded over the audio played for the trial, I just think is one of the most brilliant bits of writing. I think that it adopts this like air of formal subjectivity uh, in the name of like exploring the reality, like and questioning the reality of objectivity. And like I think this is the best edited film of that year, I think. And the way that it crafts this dissonant conflicting truth and challenges what it even means for something to be true and challenges this very binary system of guilty and innocent within a court and manages to wiggle itself into all of these pockets of gray area. I just think it's so brilliant because even though it is a really well written film, so much of that is done through like this very subtle like formal construction that like laces all of this um these like questions in your mind. So yeah, I think it's really really brilliant. It takes what begins as like analyzing the physical fall of a man to like deconstructing the psychological fall of this relationship.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think it's so
so
fascinating how it morphs.
much more than a court drama. I'll just touch on it now
Oh
because
yeah,
it makes sense, and then we can just
sure.
breeze over when it gets to my list. It's so much more than a court drama. It exploring that kind of lens of that kind of binary, as you said, but attaching that to what is really a film, as you say, about a falling relationship that no one's guilty when a relationship kind of starts to fail.
Yeah,
But putting those kind of mashing that together in such it just creates such an interesting way of viewing both systems. It creates an interesting way of viewing a justice system and reviewing relationships. I think having the child so pivotal to it all, but the child's blindness, I think that is such an interesting part of the
yeah.
film and such an interesting extra layer you've added on top of that. And I think the setting as well is really just it lodges itself in your brain. It feels kind of otherworldly. It feels kind of ephemeral, having it all like surrounded by snow, this kind of plain of white nothingness. It feels like this is such an important like distillation of these ideas that happens not in a time and a place, but just within themselves. It feels very natural kind of in that way as a film.
I
And
I
yeah.
also think, like, the weaponization of language, I think is
Mm,
so fascinating, and how you have these, like, I what is it? She can speak English, French, German.
mm,
He has English, French, but he can't speak German, I believe it is, and that
yeah.
becomes, like, this piece of tension that, she's moved to his country, speaks his language, and I think that, you also have the variance in truth within language, right? Like, I think that there isn't like this direct translation across languages. Not every word has this exact precise meaning in another dialect. So I think that that's also just another really interesting way that it like just a small piece just induces and implies this gray area when it comes to truth. I mean, there you have that quote like photography is truth, then cinema is truth 24 times a second by Jean-Luc Godard, and this
Mm.
feels like a direct challenge to that idea, I think.
For sure, and I think adding on to another layer, and this is what is so great about the film, is that there are so many different layers to attach. Is that she's also a novelist, so using her
Yeah.
writing and words to make a living, and how much of that is coming from other people, how much of that is truthful. Like, there's just so many different layers that are all kind of welded together to create this just puzzle of a film that's similar kind of like Decision to Leave in many ways. I was saying
Yeah.
this kind of puzzle that you just feel compelled to unpack because as a court drama, like it's very easy for it to end with the question, was she guilty, was she not?
But that's not
um
the point.
but it's not the point, but it also is in many ways. It also
Right,
is
sure.
like that is the overall thing you're meant to come to the conclusion about as you're watching a film. That is the kind of general question that it asks. But it's about the process of unpacking that and the process of what does it mean to answer that question? How do you go about answering that question? And the film offers so many different ways of doing that, that it is a film that is always going to generate kind of interesting conversations, interesting discussions, which is in
Yeah.
many ways the point of film, is to generate these kind of conversations that we're having now. So this is,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say where it is, reveal where it is later on, but it's very high up in my list of
Yeah,
this.
for sure, for sure. I mean, I have it at 19, and that almost feels harsh on it, but there's a lot of good movies. So,
Yeah.
but okay, what is your number 19?
My number 19, and this one we don't have to touch on as much because we talked about this extensively. This is Anora. I think this is the best
Sure.
picture winner that we've had this decade so far. Just so like, and what I remember from it, it's so interesting. It is, I remember the comedic moments, but then I'm reminded of the emotional stuff at its core. And so
Mhm.
I can easily see other people, it's the emotional core that kind of the thing that sticks with them. And then they kind of think about it more, remember how funny it is. So it's a film that you can really take anything you like out of, and it offers so much that it is hard not to take at least something from it and enjoy something from it. So I think it is very universal, very interesting, and is one that I don't think I'll ever get tired of kind of going back to. So
Yeah, no, it very, very nearly missed out on, like, making my honorable mentions top list. Like, it's just so, like, I don't know. It's such just like a punch.
mm,
It's just like a shot of energy, I think in a lot of ways. They're like it makes so much sense why this won Best Picture. I think
yeah,
it's looking back on it, like, was it really ever going to be anything else? Um, so yeah, no, really, really excellent. Um, all right, at number 18 now, I think we're at. I have Riska Hamaguchi's Drive My Car. You said Evil Does Not Exist, barely missed out.
yeah.
I I think that this one is so fascinating. I think it's one that has stuck with me
This is my number
for a
16,
while.
by the way, so very close
Oh,
to
perfect.
position.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think the way that it explores, like, the performance of self and the performance of self through grief and using, like, it's a very simple narrative tool using, like, Uncle Vanya and the play and everything like that, and having the car almost be like this, safe place
Yeah,
between performance and all these ideas. They're all very simple, but I don't know if you could have possibly executed them any better. Really. Hidetoshi Nishijima is perfect. He doesn't get spoken about enough. Same thing with Toko Miura. Um, I don't know. It's just one of those films that, like, again, and I think this is what made his, like, Oscar run so surprising. Like, it isn't this, like, bold, crazy, conceptual thing, but there's really nothing wrong with it. It's a hard
no,
film to say anything bad about.
I saw someone compare it to kind of like a novel of a film, and I
Yeah,
definitely agree with that. There is something quite poetic about it, and it is all in the dialogue, and it is, as you say, there is nothing really crazy about the way it's done, but it is just this kind of interweaving of metaphors, that is a similar thing to what is done in Evil Does Not Exist. I do think Hamaguchi, which also, yes, I think I mentioned was on my honorable mentions. If not,
yeah,
I should have mentioned it there. I think he has established himself as one of the best kind of directors of this decade so far, and
yeah,
I
100%.
deeply curious to see where he goes from here. Because yeah, there's something, and it's 3 hours, but it never feels that, and that's quite an easy point to make. But it's worth mentioning every time because that is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
And yeah, it is just exploring all of these different ideas, and it, because it takes its time with it, and because it weaves the ideas so well together, that it allows everything to breathe. You know, when you say a film like this is exploring a lot of ideas, um, it would make you think, okay, well, is it doing these kind of disparate things? But no, it has a kind of central through line of that kind of idea, as you were saying. Yes, that performance of self and that kind of performing oneself in a relationship as well. I think specifically is that the
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of through line, and everything else it marries on to this kind of core thing. That's just very impressive and unlike any. And as you said, yeah, it's not doing anything that different, but yet still feels like it's unlike anything else I've seen this decade. So
Yeah. No. 100% agree. 100% agree. Also, probably the best title card drop, like opening credits drop, 40 minutes into the movie, unmatched.
for sure.
So yeah, no, excellent, excellent
Um,
stuff.
Yep, my number 18 is another smaller film in the same vein of like Quiet Girl Totem, Mars One. I
Oh
know
yeah,
you had like more issues with it or didn't quite fall in love with it in the same way.
yeah,
I just very immediately kind of got wrapped up into this family, and I think they're all so well characterized, and the conflicts are so human, and so interestingly handled, and like again exploring it through the child's perspective I think is really interesting. The way it grounds itself in its political climate is yes, adds a kind of extra layer to think about, but at its core it is just a very impactful family drama about dreams and about and offering different perspectives on those dreams. It's not like the father, the patriarch is going no is stopping these dreams. Is He's not that kind of traditional archetypal domineering figure who only cares about himself and wants his kids to kind of follow in his path. It's not that, but it's exploring that archetype and
sure,
deconstructing that and giving that archetype a more human face, which I think is so interesting to explore, and exploring as well everyone in the family's reaction to a character like that I think is just deeply fascinating and something that just has stuck with me. It's one of the ones that's slightly harder to pin down quite why, but it has.
yeah, fair, fair. All right, on to 17 now, I think.
Yeah.
So I've gone for Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon here. A film that I really love. Lily Gladstone's performance is still, I think, my favorite like performance of the decade. Period. Um, it is just astonishing. I still can't get her scream and the look in her eyes and some of those sequences out of my mind. I could just immediately flash back to them. Um, but I think that it was a really interesting year with like this and Oppenheimer, and I think we've also seen with The Brutalist, we have a lot of these like very big films adopting the aesthetics and like the ethos of these big American epics, but are really challenging the core of like that American ideal, I think. Um, and I don't I I think that what Scorsese does here is really some of his best work. Um, it's like this dissection of America. I think that Ernest and Molly serve as like this like central metaphor for exploitation, as capitalist exploitation, racist exploitation, and this marriage that is supposed to be an equal union, just like the people in America in a broad sense are supposed to be this equal union, and it's this conflict of class where those in power, being DiCaprio's character, like slowly and like through the systems, the hegemony, they're systemically poisoning those without power, as we see through Gladstone's sickness throughout the film. And it's I don't know, it's a relationship where the sort of the romance and the allure of it is structured through like financial value and monetary value, and it really has this like cold lack of humanity, I think. And I think that I particularly like the ending. I like Scorsese's bit at the end. I think it's this really fascinating reflection of like where art, like the place that art serves as in this conversation, and if it even does serve a place in this conversation. I think it's masterful. Like I think this is just really, really incredible.
Yeah, it's certainly one that I've had more problems with. But you have often talked to me slightly more positively on the film than I would have been otherwise. I personally, I felt that kind of lack of humanity did
Sure.
kind of just draw me out to the film, and it meant I could never quite get invested in what was going on in these characters, which I found problematic for a 3 hour, however long it is, film. I think it's difficult to try and make an audience just think about these ideas for 3 hours. I would have rather
Sure.
something attached to it. But no, I totally see why and all of those points are very
Also your
interesting
cousin.
and valid. Hmm?
Also your cousin, Lily Godson, and
Yeah,
your
well,
actual
I
cousin.
believe fourth cousin twice removed or something along those lines.
Due to very, very moral and ethical things that your
Very,
family
yes,
definitely did.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, we are not Robert De Niro in that film. Uh,
Yeah, because you're
yeah,
British.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh,
No, my number 17 is Mass. Yes, it is
Ooh,
easy
good
to
show.
launch the criticism that this is just a play. It might just be a play, but if it is just a play, it's a damn good play. The writing, it's got some of the best performances, I think, of the decade. I think the four and the way they interplay and the way they're characterized, but it's never very obvious characterization. It very subtly comes through, but you do get a sense that these are four very different people and they're all offering very different perspectives on this tragedy. Um, and it is tragic, and it's such an interesting that it is such a story that needed to be told in many ways, and is a story that, yes, I think this kind of universally defines that experience of losing a child, and also your child is that. So yeah, just a tricky film to kind of watch and
Yeah.
discuss, but one that I think everyone would benefit from watching and host some of the best writing and performances of the decade. So
Yeah, no, it's one that barely didn't make my list, but it's one that I distinctly remember. Like, there's few films that I remember having like such an extreme visceral reaction to, and I distinctly remember this one just leaving me like breathless.
it's hard to watch. It's
Yeah,
hard to
like
watch.
I remember getting out of it and genuinely like feeling like I was struggling for breath, and I think it's so impressive in how dynamic the film is given its small space. I think the use of framing in this and the edit is so propulsive. Like it feels like it has more dynamism than most action movies.
100%.
Um, Even though it just takes place in one room. So yeah, really, really great. Um, Number 16 for me is Decision to Leave. You've already touched on it, and to be honest, I don't have all that much to add. I think
Yeah.
that the use of like nature and the mountains and sea as these like central metaphors for this relationship, I think that this is one of the most romantic movies of the decade. Like I think the way it uses love in this very procedural manner is so interesting, and it's just it's a very deeply compelling film. It's one that I've actually only ever seen once, and I'm like starving to go back and see again. So yeah,
Sure. Yeah, my 16 is Drive My Car, which again
sure.
we've already kind of touched on. So if you want to just hit us with your 15.
Sure. My number 15 is I don't think I'm saying the name correctly, but Jia Zhangxi's Caught by the Tides. It is my far and away my favorite film of 2025 so far. Um and this is just astounding. I highly, highly recommend everybody go check this out. It's what I think like the future of film is, to be honest. It's very much in conversation with like Jonas Mikas and like Ozu and Godard. It's a very like intertextual like epic of previously existing media. He's taking random footage that he shot. It's all focused around Zhao Tao, who is his wife and muse, and it's like just random footage that he shot from anything from like mini DV camcorder, a film camera, like 35 mil, digital camera, anything, right? Uh, Even up to like they're using like 360, cameras by the end. And it's this like kaleidoscopic portrait of this woman over the course of 30 years, and like it's just random stuff he shot, deleted scenes from films that he's made, actual scenes from films that he's made, new footage that he shot just recently. And it's all kind of welded and stitched together into this like epic romance of longing, exploring like technology and how technology and how we interact with technology has changed how we interact with people. It is so incredibly timely while also feeling very nostalgic, at the same time, I love the concept of reappropriating existing imagery, even stuff that you have released as a film before, and turning it into something completely new that takes on a completely new meaning. And I think that plays into the idea of this very like kaleidoscopic, journey through media, and how much, especially in the modern day, images really do lack meaning, and there is just like this ever shifting and evolving meaning behind all imagery. Um, so yeah, I think it's so fantastic. I mean, it's a comment on AI, it's a comment on COVID. It's one of the most modern films, but it uses footage from 30, 20, 10 years ago to build it out. I think it is like a masterpiece of like marrying image, theme, and text. I don't think that you're really going to find something better than this.
Amazing. It is one that I'm, yeah, definitely looking forward to, and we'll see kind of when we do end of year lists whether it maintains that position. My number 15 is Joyland.
Right.
This is such a tender film. It has such a unique kind of relationship dynamic at its center that is so tragic but so beautiful at the same time, that it's never going to work because societal expectations and all of this kind of thing. That it just where the film's going. Put it that way. You're not surprised by the kind of directions the film takes, but it is because they are so well established, this relationship dynamic, that it becomes something that you're desperate to see succeed, and it just can't. And so yeah, it's again kind of hard to pin down. There's something just so tender and beautiful about the way it's filmed, about some of the imagery that it constructs with like lighting and etc. And again, like I was saying before, is offering a perspective and a unique perspective that I've not seen before really on film, and therefore is so interesting to be a part of for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, 100%. It's one that barely missed out. It was on my draft when I put together a list of 50. So, yeah, really, really great stuff. My number 14. I don't know if this will be on your list. I have Ramel Ross's Nickel Boys.
Yeah, that's just a little bit higher. That's my number 12.
Okay. So we can talk about
Yeah.
it here. I mean, we've done a full review of this. You can go watch that. But I mean, it is just so big. I think it's just it feels so major. In using like you know violence as an institution, and the oppressive machine that traps people in this vicious cycle. I think that the way it's shot is not just a gimmick. It's so inventive and bold, and I think really captures the ethos of what this, like the thesis of this is, and forcing you into perspective and forcing you to see things through this way. I think that the comparisons to the Zone of Interest are not unfounded. I think it's, yeah, just a very monumental achievement. I think it's probably the best like purely American film about America. I have another one higher, but I feel like this is like a better encapsulation of America, than anything really.
Sure.
So
No, I think yes, this is definitely a thesis film that wears its thesis on its chest, but it's such an important kind of story. And yes, as you say, it's the way that they go about telling it, not just in the cinematography, but also through the editing and bringing in this real life footage, that is not
yeah,
just there
Arkel's
to be a
excellent. Yeah,
it's not just there to be a montage like you get in certain films, Selma, notably, not to rag on Selma, but it actually uses them to unpack the kind of psychology behind these characters that I thought was really interesting. But yes, as you say, we've got a review up on the channel for that
yeah,
one if you want some more extended thoughts.
yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's just uh also I think it's fascinating, just like the frame that is used both like within the camera but narratively, like it never offers objectivity, which I think is
Mm,
really, really
yeah.
important. Feels like it's almost like a run of memories, kind of. So yeah, I don't know. We could talk about this movie for a while, and we did. So watch it. Yeah.
My number 14 is May December.
Okay.
I think this is the general concept, and it's kind of another one similar to Anatomy of a Fall that just begs conversation in a really fascinating way. I think all of the stuff that it's doing stylistically, people describing it as campy, whatever, stylized, overly stylized at points. I think so well marries what the film is saying about that kind of tabloid culture and that kind of hyperbolized reactions to stuff. This film,
Yeah.
at its core, has all of those elements. I think but there's also then a more restrained beauty to it that I think you get through Melton and you get through the kind of imagery of butterflies. It has three incredible performances at its core. That all the dynamics between each of them hold so much weight and are so different that it becomes a very strange love triangle of sorts that is like it's hard to quantify quite the dynamics between them. But they're so like off kilter and so weird and so fucked up that they're just you can't help but just really be fascinated to see how they unfold and how they develop throughout the course of the film. And yeah, it's just one that also has a lot of really just deeply funny moments. I think the ending when you had all this build up to end on that kind of anti climax of this that all of that was building towards this. I think really just is that kind of perfect cherry on top of the cake of this film. And so yeah, just one that has really stuck with me and I think is so effortless in marrying this kind of, as we've been speaking about before, that kind of the formal elements with what is actually
Yeah.
about.
For sure. For sure. I also have a comedy next. I've gone for Emma Seligman's Shiva Baby. Um, I I just think that this is so funny. I think that this really, like, for Rachel Sennett, kind of ushered in this, like, with her and Io Debris and this sort of, like, era of post-COVID 2020s, Gen Z anti-comedy, which I do think is a distinctly different brand than, like, the Nathan Fielders and, um, Tim Robinsons and, of the world. And I think it's just very, very, fun and claustrophobic. I think like, pretty much all of the jokes hit. I think formally, it makes use of its space really, really well in kind of trapping you alongside, Rachel Sennett's character. Danny, I think is her name. I don't know, it's oddly a comfort film for me. It's very short. It's like an hour, 15 minutes long. It's just something that, I can throw on and have a very, very fun time with something that's also, I think, very, very formally competent. It shows the makings of a very strong filmmaker.
Nice, nice. Well, I've got another comfort film at 13, The Holdovers. I think
Mm,
instant Christmas classic. When people say that they don't make films like they used to, I think just point to this and be like,
yeah,
yes, they can, yes, they do, and yes, they still hit in that exact same way. There's something very nostalgic about this film. And it also like it's so lovingly made, I think. It's so earnest in what it is doing. It knows what it is. Um, but when you have Paul Giamatti giving such a brilliant performance, and the character is just so funny, I think just this guy who was just his whole life. There's that one line where he's like, he wants to write a monograph, and they're like, really, you can't even dream bigger than writing a novel, like at least a novella. Come on, man. I think that's just so funny, and then pairing him with fuck, what's his name? What's the actor's name?
I don't remember.
Damn. But anyway, yes, pairing him with the younger guy. I think that is such just breeds this comedy and breeds joy, and you know that you know where it's going. But I think Alexander Payne in the screenplay and what it's doing, it's snappy, it's fun. But yeah, it just feels like Christmas in a way that's very difficult to quantify and has instantly become one of my feel good classics that I will watch year on year from now.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think also, like, as a Christmas film, like, it does feel very Christmassy and does feel very, like, comforting and warm, while at the same time, I do think it's like it does have an identity of its own, and it is doing something different with the Christmas formula, and it is really challenging the people for Who Christmas is difficult. Like I think the Divine Joy Randolph characters is really, really compelling in that. And just what does Christmas mean for people who, aren't always going to be happy and cheery and stuff for the time and aren't always going to feel that warm comfort. So yeah, I know it's another one that didn't make my list, but I think is really quite good. All right. We got The Brutalist. This is another one we did a review for it recently when it came out. We had a very long discussion on it. I adore this film. I understand, the issues people have with it, but I really just love how big it is. I love the really like bold, radical exploration of like artistic control in the face of capitalism and um the how it explores the immigrant experience and uses the language of art as a way to explore political displacement. And I think I'm always really drawn to films that use art as a central metaphor, as someone who, quite likes to make art. And I think that this is one of the strongest. I think, yeah, I don't know. It's when you get to the final act, I find this like really depressing irony of the 80s pop music and how tacky it becomes and regressive it becomes as just one of the most like breathtaking sequences of any film so far this decade. I think that the ending is astonishingly good. It's so well done on the technical side. The Vista Vision, I don't think it's just a gimmick. I think it's really, really effectively used, and I can't really imagine the film without it. I don't know. I wrote about this a lot on Letterboxd and talked about it for like 40 minutes on a review. So
Yeah,
I'll
we've got a long review if you want. Yes,
yes, but
because yeah, wasn't quite as blown away, but all of my thoughts I've saved for the review. I
yes,
won't.
yes,
So my number 12 was Nickel Boys, which we've touched on. So I don't know if you want to just jump into your
sure.
11.
My number 11 is Nope by Jordan Peele, one that I am very, very taken by. I think that this is Peele's best work by a margin, to be honest. I think the way that this is another film that again it uses art as like its central metaphor, which again I'm quite drawn to, but it takes like this concept of exploring the history of film and spectacle and also like blackness and race and kind of amalgamates these all into this really central core idea of how people just want spectacle and people just want big things and how we choose to capture those things, especially in the modern age using with like phones and everything like that. And I think that it is like this. It feels very much like a contemporary exploitation film, in a lot of ways, which I don't really think has existed in any genuine sense until this film. I just think it's really really special how it utilizes genre tropes and utilizes genre archetypes as this sort of like base and guiding path to then like subvert them into this racial exploration. um I think that I don't know, using spectacle as a way to challenge the audience's desire for spectacle in the first place. I just think that this film is doing like it is the quintessential like 2020s blockbuster. I think it is doing everything to both like from a place of love and embodying while also challenging um that sort of type of film that I don't really think any other film does. Like I don't really think that there's anything like that. So yeah, I just think it's pretty much perfect.
Amazing. Nice. Yes, it would have made a top 50 if we were
Yes.
doing an original that. But yes, my number 11 is so my favorite musical of the decade. And I'm not really a musicals person, but Tick Tick Boom. Uh,
Mm,
just, I think, phenomenally like frenetic from word go. Andrew Garfield is so captivating. Lin-Manuel Miranda's directing makes me wish he would just do more of that and less
yeah.
of whatever he's doing, because he's very good at directing this piece. I think just as a core, this musical is very good and more catered to my sensibilities, what I want from a musical. You know, I don't want the big songs about emotions, but I think the music within Tick Tick Boom is more restrained and kind of fit. It really all feels like one whole package that is great. I think Robin De Jesus was amazing as
Yeah.
a sporting performance, and everything just felt like it came together with this film in a way that is so confident and so assured and so tragic in parts. It does feel like, because obviously Jonathan Larson dies quite tragically young. The whole film feels like a rush sprint,
Hmm.
which I think is so interesting when you look at, yes, what happens when someone dies much younger than is kind of expected, or that you feel they should have died. And I think it captures that energy and that spirit of a life well lived, but just one it's too short and it's too quick. It's gone from us too soon. I think it has all of that and distills it into a film, which I think that's just something that I hadn't seen before, and I think really works. It's really
Yeah.
impactful.
No, 100%, 100%. Andrew Garfield should have won the Oscar that year.
Well, would have saved a. Well, actually, wouldn't have saved the slap. You know, it would have still happened, but
Yeah.
Will Smith would have been fine.
uh, yeah. All right, into top tens now. Top tens.
Anytime.
I have gone with my number 10 as Tar by Todd Field.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, Kate Blanchett is astounding, but I think that this still really stands as a very singular piece for our time, exploring the gray area between an artist's work and the artist themselves. And I think that I don't know, we really it's a very, very strong, just deep dive into this character's psyche, in a way that I don't really see films doing a lot now anymore. I think that, um, this is another they don't make him like they used to film, in a very different way, I think. Um, so yeah, I know, I think exploring a lot of that nuance, between, art and artist, I think taking into, like, just trying to think how I want to phrase this. Like, I think that the ending, is so compelling, and I think that this really explores that similar idea of, like, performance of self. I think that the invention of a name, the invention of, like, a past, muse in a lot of ways. I think that the sort of ghost story elements of this film are heavily overlooked. I think that this is a very paranoid film, and it's a very film that's paranoid about image from the perspective of Lady Tara. I think, like, one of the opening sequences of this is, her, like, people texting about her, right? It's a person who is deeply insecure about their image and putting on this air of strength. And I think just tunneling into that and watching it slowly erode, while also understanding parts and pieces of what this character desires, as like we're learning more and more about, and, like, connecting more and more with her as she's eroding. And it creates this, like incredible dynamic. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think maybe the best character piece of the decade.
I think when the most popular kind of Google search terms you get after the film is it based on a true story, or is
Yeah.
Lydia Tarr a real person? You're doing something right. So yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
My number 10 is The Father. I don't think any film, even though there's been good films about kind of dementia away from her, is one that comes to
Yeah.
mind. I don't think a film has quite been able to capture that experience quite so truthfully, and as truthfully as I think we can feel, having not obviously been through that. There is something so scary and horrifying about it. I think the way that the production design switches around, it's an easy thing. It's conceptually, it goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's a good thing to do. You can see how all of the pieces got to that point. It's not, it's not rocket science to do that. But I think the way that it is approached and achieved throughout the film is so well done, because it never showcases that that's what it's doing. It just kind of these things, these technical elements are happening around it all in service to build this experience. Obviously, Anthony Hopkins at its core is so phenomenal and probably my favorite. It's close whether he's my favorite performance of the decade so far. I'd
Sure.
say it's probably between either him or Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall. Be one of
Good.
the two. But there is something so generate. We're never going to get another performance like that, I don't think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like there's something so deeply haunting about watching it, especially having relatives who have suffered through that. That it, yes, helps me kind of understand that a bit more and really offers insights into that, which I think again is one of the things that film can do, and it's so important to see in films is that they teach you stuff and
Yes.
they tell you stuff in sensitive and in ways that you can't read about. You need to see it. You need to visually experience in it. And I think Zeller puts you in that place in a way that I don't think, like in a way that is just I've not seen before, and I don't think I'll see again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I totally agree. It's one that barely missed out on my list. But yeah, just a very emotionally intelligent film, I think.
Which is so strange that the son was so I
So
still don't
unemotionally intelligent.
understand how that generational fall off that much.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. Is he gonna make another movie? Like,
I mean, you'd expect.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Number 9 for me is a Romanian film called Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World by Radu Jude. Um, this one, it's like it's slow, it's long, but it's very, very funny. It's a film that I think understands like this. I don't know the contemporary mindset of like the disillusioned youth. I think more than anything I've really seen. I think it embraces post irony as this like response to feeling like you just have this complete lack of place in the world to go. I mean, the leading performance here from Elisa Manalace is so funny. She's like going around town. She's trying to put together. She's working for this company that's like creating the safety video where like they're very clearly like and obviously exploiting their employees, but then she's having to like do like the safety video cover up thing eventually. That's like, oh no, we're treating our employees very well. And it's just like this stressful drive around. I'm pretty sure it's in Bucharest, in Romania, but you know, she's picking up people, dropping people off. She has this like TikTok account where she like films videos through like an Andrew Tate filter where she's just like making fun of random people and her face is Andrew Tate's face. Like it's so like sardonic, I think in that way. But it's also very, very like natural. It's a very working class film for the contemporary working class where so much of jobs come through the internet and through like the gig economy and everything. And I don't think I've seen a film that's like distilled the contemporary working class and understands the contemporary working class and is a very class conscious film, I think, in that way, while also just being like riotously funny. So yeah, no, great stuff.
Nice. My number 9 is one that you brought up on your honorable mention, Spencer.
Mm, mhm.
I found it impossible not to be blown away by this. It's so claustrophobic. The visual metaphors that are created are so interesting. The fact that we're using that kind of Lorraine formula of the events taking place over 3 days and specifically Christmas as well. I think there's a lot to unpack there, and just the way that it deconstructs Diana and the kind of national consciousness, the kind of her as an image, bringing that to the human level while still keeping you slightly removed from that. It's quite a cold film. The film's sterile in a way. It's not like Happy Clappy. Yes, we're doing the Diana and her family film,
Sure.
and it's going to be lovely. It keeps you removed from all of this in a way. You are passively observing it for a lot of it. And I think that, and comparing that to the way we looked at Diana and we look at these big celebrity figures, specifically royal figures, in like the media and things, I think there is such an interesting parallel that Lorraine captures there and such. And because he makes you sit in that for 2 hours, it is such a perfect way of making you think about it and forcing you to question your own relationship to that kind of media and kind of the royal family and etc. So yeah, there's so much stuff going on with this film that I think is so deeply clever and intelligent. And when you have all of this luxurious imagery, but it's all still like brilliant production design, brilliant costume design, but it's all still a bit sterile. It's just so fascinating and so expertly executed that yeah, it is one film that has made me think and really stuck with me since. It's been about 4 years since it came out, but still I get images and shots of that film lodged into my mind.
For sure. I mean, I think like this is my number 26. Like it was one spot out. If I didn't like watch Caught by the Tides last month as a new release, then this would have been on my list as well. I think it is like the quintessential biopic, really, of this decade. It's everything that a biopic should be, understanding the psyche as a representation of a person rather than just like telling their story externally, I think. So yeah, great stuff. All right, my number 8 is a film from one of my favorite filmmakers, Celine Sciamma's Petite Maman. A film that just made me want to give my mom a hug. I think it's so like, has there ever been a film that's like this tender? I think it's it's so tonally warm and cozy, and like it articulates this very melancholic like innocence of childhood. Um, Claire Melton, who did Spencer as well, like I think is one of the best cinematographers working today. Um, I just think that she has such a grasp on how to distill imagery with emotion. Um, and yeah, I don't know. It's such a devastating film that's also, I think, very much a comfort film. I think this works so well as a very mature look on the desire for happiness in this, inner, like it's a generational trauma film that doesn't feel like it's beating you over the head with it being like about generational trauma. I think it's a very like natural and reserved look at that. So yeah, I don't know. I think just it's genius, really. I think as a fantasy film to be able to like explore all of these things. I just we're never gonna have another Celine Sciamma, really.
For sure, for sure. No, I was equally blown away by it. Not didn't quite make my list, but yeah, I think it's
Yep.
so interesting as well hearing her speak about her kind of process of making films and the fact that a lot of the films and the way she approaches writing is specifically attached to desire, and
Yeah.
obviously that makes sense for someone like Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But the way that you can kind of transpose that onto this film, and it's like, yes, well, what would a child desire? And it's just like it's the happiness and to be loved by their parents, and it's like there is something so tender in that yeah, I do think is very interesting and is very
For sure.
beautiful. My number 8, and I assume I'm not sure quite how high up on this on your list it is, but my number 8, so I Saw the TV Glow.
It's my number 7, so that's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, horrifying. It's
Yeah.
my favorite horror film of this decade so far. I think there is something so fresh about the way that it approaches these things and about the way it approaches this time period and about the way it goes about constructing lore and a world behind the film. There is constantly you feel you're not being let into stuff. You're not knowing stuff, but you're not. It's because you're not allowed to. And I think the way that even that feeling, because we've talked about this film before, but that's kind of new thing that I was thinking about recently with the film. That kind of restricted knowledge that you
Hmm.
have so beautifully kind of also mirrors onto the trans experience that the film is going for. That I just think that was another layer that just I was thinking about it recently, and it's like there are so many layers to this film that is demands unpacking and demands conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like I've talked about this film a lot. I think it's a very special and important film for me personally. I think I don't know. I don't think that there's ever been a film that so accurately captures the viscera of dysphoria, except for maybe another Schoenberg film that I'll be talking about in a second. But at least in the contemporary sense and through the lens of the internet and our relationship with media really being the crux of how identity is formed. And I think that this film just like inundates itself, like it's just surrounded with all of these very contemporary concepts, and I think exploring all of those things through nostalgia, I think is a really just devastating touch. I think it's such a like temporally dissonant film. It's very much a film about like removing yourself from the present and removing yourself from existing in the present. And I think it does so through all of these like I know like thematic levers and temporal levers and levers in like the construction of the film. Um, it's just yeah, really, really perfect. I think in its construction, it's a very like tangible articulation of a lot of intangible emotions. I think so.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. My number 7, and again, this is one that I don't know how high up it is for you, but Zone of Interest.
Yep. This is. I'll talk about this one later.
Right, cool. So I just touched on it briefly now. Then, I think it is so uncomfortably relevant. That is the kind of main takeaway I think from this film, and the thing we should be discussing about when it comes to this film is how deeply, how it's set in the 1940s, but still to this day there is importance in the lessons that I think the film is trying to take get you to take away. There is such a core thesis to it. Um, and that is it would be easy for the film to kind of lose itself in that thesis and lose itself in even maybe a kind of sense of smugness. I can see
Yep.
in the hands of a less capable director how a film like this would be perceived as smug or kind of preachy. But it's not. It's just horrifying, and it really does just hold a mirror up to you and make you question your approaches to horrific events and genocide. And let's not beat around the bush here, the kind of Israel and IDF and all of that political
Yep.
situation going on right now. Yeah, that I just think it's hard not to view it as one of the most impactful, most important cinematic achievements of this decade. And yeah, I mean, I put it. It kind of is a weird one to talk about because I feel weird about ranking it anywhere as a
Sure.
film. I think there's importance in that, but equally, um, I do have films over it, even though I do think it is maybe the most important film of the decade. There are ones that I think have left me with slightly more, and I think will continue to had a more kind of personal impact on me, I suppose. Whereas this, I see the universal impact,
Sure.
and I'm not saying that it wasn't personally impacted by it, of course, but there are some that I just prefer as films, I suppose,
Sure.
without diminishing anything of this.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I'll touch on that one in a second.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. But yes, your number.
My number 6 is Julia Ducournau's Teton. This is a film that I've been infatuated with since I've seen it. I actually just rewatched it a few months ago, showing it to friends. Always a fun one to show to
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think it's my second piece of trans cinema really in a row. Um, but I think it is really really radical. It's like this self-inflicted body horror in the name of identity construction, in the name of like building out this identity for this character and the mutilation of the internal self to do so. In the external self as well, right? Like it's I at its core, it's a film about universal and unconditional love. And I think there's something really interesting to say about like men's sense of sexual power through automobiles, especially like I know this is a thing in like American culture, but like the association with like these big strong cars with big men, right? and sort of like the reclamation of that through the much discussed car sex scene. I think that dancing in this film is really interesting. You have the bit where she's dancing on top of like the fire truck, the dance sequence between her and Vincent Linden, um, and that is sort of like this release. I think that its use of fire and water is also like really compelling. Like there's so many like fascinating pieces. It's the cycle between birth and death, male and female. It's drawing these very contrasting pieces together and making these big, bold, sweeping and like audacious statements about binaries. Which I just think is incredible. I think the Corno's a visionary. And I'm quite disappointed that her new film is supposed to be not all that great. Because this is I think one of the most important and reflective films of the decade.
Amazing. My number 6 is Banshees of Inisherin. Martin Madonna is one of my favorite creatives, just filmmaker, playwright, just something about the way he approaches characters and dialogue and stories. There's something almost like there's fables about them. There's something kind of universal about the way he approaches these things that I just think is so fascinating and just really speaks to me. I'm not quite sure why. It's hard to pin down quite why Martin Madonna works as well as he does for me, but there's such interesting stuff here about art and Brendan Gleeson's character. There's this kind of palpable fear of death and fear of running out of time that I think is fascinating. And when compared with Colin Farrell's character, these just two, he builds this relationship, and it's that kind of it's a very simple hypothetical for a film. It's like, what if someone just doesn't want to be friends with you anymore? And he explores all the different approaches to a question like that in a way that feels so tight, and as a way that is done through character and is done through place as well. There's such a palpable sense of both community and isolation that you get from Inisherin as a location that again feels kind of otherworldly in a similar way to what I was discussing with Anatomy of a Fall before, because it is this island that there's something so fundamentally human about the way that it approaches these topics, and it feels like it wasn't made by someone. It just feels like it always existed as a film, on top of that being deeply funny, and on top of that with excellent performances, some of the best of the decade. So it's hard to quite quantify. I think I did my best there, but to explain quite why this film works well for me. But it just does. It just washes over me every time I watch it. And Martin Madonna, is just this, and this isn't even my favorite of his work, which I think, I just love Martin Madonna, guys.
Fair enough. Yeah, this is one that I think I've grown to appreciate a bit more. I think also in talking to you, kind of in the same way as I think I've done with Nope for you. Where I think that it's one that I was a bit more passive on when initially watching it, but I think that there is just so much to love about McDonough's screenwriting in this. So no. All right, top 5 now.
Top 5.
My number 5 is Damien Chazelle's Babylon. I just think this is so major. I think it is like we've been talking about these films that are about art, right? And these films that are these reflections on art. And I think what Nope does with its reflection of spectacle. And I don't think that anything really is in the same conversation as Babylon. It's so like grandiose. It's this deconstruction of spectacle through this rapid series of vignettes, spanning across decades, spanning across this town. It's this really fascinating look at this town. It's a town that's built on like facade, and it's this town that's almost performing a version of itself for the greater world to see. It is a film that is very deeply entrenched in falsehood. I think it's a film that's about lies. It's a film about the lies of prosperity. It's a film about America's lies, film's lies. And it's something that manages to be in conversation with all of film history at once, but it also feels so like distinctly singular in its vision. Like it's very operatic. It's Yeah, I don't know. I love the ending. I think that the ending is like maybe my favorite scene in a film this decade. Like I just think for a film of its stature to just commit to something so bold, I think is fantastic. I love the monologue between Gene Smart's character and Brad Pitt. I think that that's really the thesis of the film. I have this quote written down here in my notes, like, "You've been given a gift, be grateful, your time is today, but you'll spend eternity with angels and ghosts." I think this idea of film as the eternal, but this town as something that is so, like, uh, I don't know, it's something that will come and go. And the actors and directors and everything, all of that will come and go, but it has this belief and faith in film as something that will always permeate, our minds and our thoughts, and be like this ever-present existence. So I know, I think it's like kind of the film about film. So yeah.
Amazing, nice. My number five is Anatomy of a Fall, which we've touched on before, so I
Yeah.
can just go ahead with my number four, which is one that was on your honorable mentions. I was sad I didn't make your 25, but Monster.
Yeah.
This is the other Rashomon structured film, but it is so much more than that. The way it uses that to unpack kind of this idea of childhood perception of yourself. You don't know who you are as a child in the same way your parents don't know who you are, in the same way your teachers don't know who you are. And that kind of exploration of childhood identity is so tenderly explored and analyzed through the structure. I think all of the different the way it weaves its plot together is so interesting because it's not really there's not much plot that happens. Um but it feels like there is a lot happening. It feels like there's something monumental going on because it's coming from the child's perspective. And to the child, obviously, this is, this is his life. These are probably some of the most important events that are happening in his life right now. But it at the same time, you look back and you take a step back, and that's why the perspective kind of switches are so important because you get a kind of different sense of the whole thing. It recontextualizes the whole thing,
Yep.
these different perspective switches, which is just the perfect use of that structure, better than Rashomon even uses that structure. So yeah, I think there's so much to fall in love with this film. The way it constantly is in conversation with itself, um, and the way you can bring it's so universal that you can kind of bring whatever you want onto it,
Yeah.
and you can relate to this child because we've all been children, and so yeah, there's something so universal about this one as well in a similar way to I was going with Banshees of Inisherin, but with this one, its formal elements are so apparent. The filmmaking kind of makes itself so clear, uh, but it all is working in the service of these kind of broader ideas and the broader messages that the piece is trying to give off. So yeah, just this is one to analyze really, and something that will stay with me. The kind of experience of watching it for the first time and seeing it unfold and piecing it all together.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. Yeah, like I said, just barely missed out on my list. Okay. Number four for me is going to be Kelly Reichardt's First Cow. Um, I I grew up reading, so I was homeschooled, and like how I learned history and specifically American history was through um was through historical fiction novels. And because my mom would like put together my curriculum and stuff like that. Like she didn't want to just like go through like textbooks and just learn like dates and facts and stuff. Like she wanted us to like have some sort of like emotional connection to history, and thought that that'd be the best way to like absorb these these facts and this vast story of like specifically like again like how America was constructed and everything like that. And First Cow just really has that air for me. Like it felt weirdly like comforting and nostalgic for me, I think because of that and because of like the stories that I grew up reading being those. Um, but even beyond that, I think that there isn't a film that's photographed like nature and the lushness of the American West better in recent memory. I think as an exploration of the foundations of capital and capitalism, and really the foundations of modern American economics through this very simple, reserved narrative is so brilliant. I think that um, there isn't really a better way that you could take on such a vast like topic to understand and critique it. Um, I think that the way that Riker edits this film is also just so uh like kind, I guess, if that makes sense. Like it's a film that feels like it's sort of like has this gentle guiding hand leading you through its world. Um, I'm a sucker for slow cinema. I think that Kelly Reichardt is the best doing it right now. I think that she is like the contemporary American filmmaker. I don't think that anybody captures America in really the way that she does right now. So yeah, first cow for me.
Amazing. My number three is one that again was on your honorable mentions. This is All of Us Strangers.
Mm,
I mentioned Anthony Hopkins being the best one. Andrew Scott, I do think, also deserves a mention in there. And we've done a review on this one as well, so there'll be more extended thoughts there if you look on the channel. But there's something so, I think, viscerally emotional about this one that it's hard for it to not stay with you. There's the fact that it takes place at Christmas, which so I've actually read the book that it's based on now,
yeah,
and all of the elements that it adds on are perfect because it adds on the sense of queerness, which I think when you're dealing with identities and identities trapped in the past and those kind of conversations that you never have with people, the whole like sense of queerness really maps quite well into that. I think setting it at Christmas as well adds a new lens because it is something that you return to. These traditions, they stay with you in the same way these memories are staying with him, and the fact that he can't move on because you don't move on from traditions of Christmas. I think that is such a fascinating way of adding an extra layer to the film. Yeah, there's so much going on here, which I don't think we're going to do justice to now. So yes, as I say, go and check out our review for why it is one of, for me, the best films of the decade
yeah,
by a long time. And I'm greatly looking forward to seeing whatever Andrew Haigh does next.
for sure, for sure. All right, my number three is going to be the other Jane Schoenbrunn film. I think the better Jane Schoenbrunn film. We're all going to the World's Fair. Um, I, I don't know. I kind of mentioned. I mentioned a lot about like the distillation of like the contemporary ethos. I think, and like talk about the story with I Saw the TV Glow, but I don't think like a film understands the internet any better than this one does. I think just like the soulless, lifeless, white light. I think the way that it subtly manipulates your brain and how you process the real world, and the blend of when you spend too much time on the internet, how that blends into your perception of real things. I think that this film is so haunting and just like soul sucking and draining, and like it just leaves you feeling so empty, I think. And as a piece of I think a film that's very explicitly about gender dysphoria, and a film about transness on the internet age, I think it's really just so compelling. I think it's a film that like you just kind of sit there for the 90 minutes, at least for me, and are just like overwhelmed. Well, just kind of it feels all very like flat and intimate, and it feels very like personal and specific to a place and a time. I don't think that we're ever going to have something that exists like this. It feels like it was released in this very perfect pocket where it could both be something and comment on that thing. And I think that this is going to be one of the most influential and important films, and Jane Schoenbrunn in general as a filmmaker is going to be one of the most influential and important filmmakers coming out of this decade. And I think we're going to see a lot of films engage with media and the internet, and the looseness of all of these binary constructs in very similar ways.
Amazing. Amazing. My number two is one that I still find hard to pin down quite why I like so much. But Another Round.
Mm,
Um, this really makes you feel drunk, and that's quite difficult to do in a film. But and what I mean by that is it gives you all the highs and all the lows of it. It unpacks everything it means to have a relationship with alcohol and to drink, and the kind of it captures something about that human experience of interacting with people and having fun, but also the negatives that can come across with it. I think Mads Mikkelsen is just astonishing in the film. It all has a kind of sense of fun to it that counterbalances so well. Yeah, it's I'm struggling to really pinpoint down quite why I like it so much. But when you get to the end and when you get to that dance sequence, I think that for me is my favorite sequence scene in any film of the decade so far. The joy that's in it, but attaching it to the entire context of the film, that it's you're left questioning, and still to this day, is that a happy ending? Is that a happy ending? No, it's kind of it's a ending that is true to life. It is just an ending for this character. We leave him here, and yeah, that is it. And so there's something deeply human about it, really funny, really tender, really tragically sad at points. That just makes you think a lot about your own relationship with alcohol, and it's
yeah,
yeah, hard to pinpoint down quite why this one works so well for me, but it just does. It has a kind of magnetic impact on me, and every time I sit down and watch it, I'm instantly transported and instantly fall in love with these characters again.
yeah, for sure, for sure. No, it's one that I haven't seen since its release, but I really want to revisit. Okay, my number two, and it was
Which
very hard for me to choose between two and one, but my number two is also your number one. I'm pretty sure,
yeah, this tea's
and that
alcohol.
is
Yes,
After Sun by
yeah,
Charlotte Wells. It
yes.
was between this and what is, my number one. It was very, very difficult, but I very, very, very narrowly gone for After Sun. This is the number two, but I mean it's perfect.
Mm,
I think that Charlotte Wells. I mean, when are we? I'm dying for another film from her.
mm,
I don't think that there's really anybody that's had a debut like this. Like this might be the best debut film ever made. I think that just the confidence to take on the scope of a film engaging with memory through camera and
mm,
memory through image, um, and just explore the and dissect the intimacy of what it means to remember a lost loved one. Um, and the way it expresses that formally, like you think about the dance sequence, you think about those sequences where it's in the dark and you have the flashing
mm.
lights, like it's so formally expressive, while also just having this like very almost like drab and simple text, that is just so focused on just like the little moments and the little conversations. I mean, we talk so much, I think, on this channel in our discussions about the marriage of form and text, and like I you really, yeah, like it's hard to look past this as one of the best ever.
Yeah, there's I think one of the most chilling aspects of the film is the kind of, as you say, there is nothing big about it. There is nothing.
Yeah.
There are no big scenes. When you remember it, and this is what's weird because it's a film about memory, and when you remember watching After Sun, you get more a general sense of it.
Mhm.
I'm not remembering individual moments. I'm remembering more the kind of general vibe of the film, which I think is exactly what Charlotte Wells is trying to come across with memory, is that you don't remember these. There's something so strong and so specific and detailed about these memories, but equally they kind of all blur into one. And it's the fact that yes, she has lost this person, um, but that's never revealed. It's never explicitly said. Like you could probably watch the film and not understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but it's because when you are remembering someone and someone you've lost, you don't want to remember the loss itself. And so it never comes up. It's always in the background. It's always restrained. It's always held from you. Yeah, it's just a masterpiece on nearly.
And Paul Mescal,
Yeah,
like
Yeah, it
One
is.
one of the very best performances. I mean,
Yeah, a truly astonishing film, and one
yeah.
that, yeah, I feel like I've been to that place in Turkey. I've never been there, but I feel like
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, I feel I have memories in that place, and I have memories of this character.
And talk about also child performances. Frankie
Yeah.
Corio.
Yes, yes, I feel she
Christ.
is surely
Like,
you're out when we're doing that discussion, but yeah, possibly the best.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's a
it's
difficult
so
film to
well
kind of
shot. I can never think about Under Pressure in the same way really anymore.
no,
As
no,
a piece of music, I think it is one of those rare times where film can fully transform how you view a song.
yeah,
Um, I mean, yeah, it's astounding. Like I feel like we've talked about this one for years.
yeah,
There's so much that we've said about it. I don't know what else we can really add to this conversation, but it's just pretty much astounding in every way.
yeah, yeah,
All right, my number one is The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer. Like I said, very tough decision between this and After Sun, but I think especially recently, this film has just felt so impactful. It's one that I think about so much, to the point I wrote an essay that ended up getting published out into the academic commons. It was published into a book as well, just about this film in relation to Gaza and Palestine. I've published it on Letterboxd if you would like to read it. Um, but I think just spending just a month or two with this film and doing a bunch of research around it and about Jonathan Glazer, I just think that this is like if I'm thinking about what is like the definitive film of this decade, what is the film of the decade? I struggle to come up with an answer that isn't this one. Really. I think that as this like passageway back to the morals and ethics of a bygone time, and that also serves as this mirror back to the present day. And I think it could not have been released at a more timely time where we are seeing ourselves and media construct these walls and not want to engage in dialogue around the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by Israel. I think that this film, the way it formally presents itself, like, I mean, even just like the central conceit of the walls, and the walls as the separation between this family's home and Auschwitz, and the way it plays out almost like a domestic drama. I think that the relationship between Hedwig and Rudolf Hoss is so interesting, because you have this like romantic drama really, and I think even like the book it's based on is like even more explicitly about the romance, which I just find fascinating. And it's playing into like these very Western archetypes of storytelling and narrative, and all of what it is saying about the Holocaust and about institutional violence and about ethnic cleansing, genocide. All of that is done passively, but the fact that it is done passively is what makes it so apparent. And I think you just have such like an inherent dissonance to the construction of this film that I don't think has ever really been achieved in the same way. It is a horror film where the construction of the horror is done within your mind. Jonathan Glazer is just giving you the puzzle pieces, and you're building up the horror in your mind. You never are seeing the Holocaust. It's all you,
yeah,
and it's he's almost implicating you in the crime. And I just think that is brilliant as a piece of direction. I think that this is maybe even like the best directed film of the past, of this century so far. I think that you could I don't think I would go as far as to say that. I think that you have things like David Lynch with Mulholland Drive that would, put up a fight, but like it's certainly in that like top 3, top 5 conversation for me. Just an astonishing piece of direction from Glazer. So, and yeah,
yeah,
as you mentioned, just so important as well with the ongoing genocide. So,
yeah.
but yeah,
There we go.
right
Wow,
then.
that's the film. Yeah, top 25 of the decade so far, and we'll do this
In
again in another 5 years with
Yep,
we've got
the full
everything.
decade. Insane
Yeah.
that we wanted to do this with all 50 in it, like a top 50 from each of us, because that literally would
Well,
have been longer than The Brutalist.
I think it shows what a good decade it has been for films. The
Yes.
fact that we had 50 that we were prepared to talk about, had to cut down to 25, and still spent so long on each individual film. Because yeah, there's been so much brilliant stuff this decade, and I think that is important to, now that we're halfway through, sit back and kind of appreciate.
Yep. No, 100%, 100%. But those are our lists. If you've made it all the way through this video, congrats, I guess. Thank you for watching. And yeah, we're gonna have, plenty more reviews coming up as we kind of said at the end of our Superman review. This is something we're gonna try and stick with this. We do want to stay recording these types of videos and these types of reviews and just keep on talking about films with y'all. So thank you for watching. You can follow us on Letterboxd if you would like to hear more of us yapping about movies. And until next time, stay safe, everybody, and goodbye.